Hello, everyone. It's everyone's favorite time of the year. It's Breeders' Cup season. Well, welcome to another edition of the Pick 5 Players Show. I'm your host, Michael Pellerin, aka Horse Guy Mike. Not picking any cards this weekend. We're actually going to be looking into next weekend's Breeders' Cup. Pre-entries just came out, so we're just going to be diving into some initial thoughts, strategy. We've got 3 different pick 5s, and they're all Breeders' Cup pick 5s going into Friday and Saturday. So what we want to talk about today is just go through a couple of the races, talk about what our strategy is. Not going to go through and say like, hey, here's the horses we're going to be picking for each race. Just do a general, run through each race, seeing what we're leaning on, look at the wagering menu, see how we want to play it, pick out some standouts, and then kind of go from there. Next week, we're going to be pushing 3 different videos. We'll have a Friday pick 5 video and then 2 different pick 5 videos for both of the pick 5s leading up to Saturday. So let's go ahead and pull up that wagering menu in the first place. So we've got some really good things here. Let's go ahead and do the first pick 5 that we're going to be playing starts Friday, race number 5 with the Juvenile Turf Sprint. As we know, Future Stars Friday. Love that we moved all the JV races. It's been a few years since they've done that now, so it's kind of what everyone expects. So we have a pick 5 kicking off with race 5, leading into race 9. Last year they moved it so the Juvenile wasn't the last race. They moved it to the Turf being the last race. It's nice, you kind of get a turf, dirt, turf to finish off. And this is going to be interesting here because the Juvenile days are always long shots, always getting bombs. It's very rare where you're getting a heavy favorite home. Last year you saw Cave Rock was a huge favorite. Forte won that race a few years back. You had Dennis's Moment, wasn't able to do it. We got Storm the Court. So the JV is always a little bit of a wild card there. Not even just the main race, the filly race, the Turf Sprint. I've never seen a bigger crapshoot in my life than a Juvenile Turf Sprint. There's some horses there we can lean on this year, and we'll go through each of those. But really nice to get a nice solid pick 5 with just those 5 races. If you are into the doubles, there are some really interesting doubles here. One being the Juvenile fillies going into the Distaff, and then the Juveniles going into the Classic, and then also the Juvenile Turf going into the Turf on Saturday. So really cool if you like those bets and you've got some strong opinions. JV into the olders for each of those 3 main divisions there. So really excited for that one. And then on Saturday, we actually have a number of pick 5s. We're not going to play that first pick 5, which includes the first 2 undercard races. We're going to start our pick 5 with race number 3, and that's the Dirt Mile. And I know a lot of people have probably the likeliest single of the day in that Dirt Mile to kick us off in Cody's Wish. We'll see. We'll go through that race in a second and see if we can find anyone to beat Cody's Wish, but could be a potential good way to start that day there. Because leading into the next race, you've got the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, which not only kicks off a pick 4, but it also kicks off the all-turf pick 4 for Saturday. So a lot of great multi-leg races going on here. We're only going to talk about when we do our videos next week, only going to be talking about the pick 5 strategy because that is a little bit different. So even though, let's say you go 3 or 4 deep in a turf race during the main pick 5 sequence, if you were doing an all-turf pick 4, you might not want to go as deep in that. So if you're able to single Cody's Wish in that first leg, go 3 or 4 deep in the Filly and Mare Turf, if you're doing all turf races, you're going to need to find one of those legs to make a stand on. Same thing with the dirt. If you're doing the all dirt pick 4, similar thing. And I think generally in these type of races, and generally in North America, it seems like it's easier to find a favorite or a single on the dirt. So people are more likely to go skinny on dirt races, spread a little bit on these turf races, especially when you're getting a lot of Euros that you might not necessarily know a lot about. So an all turf pick 4, I think is going to pay a lot more than that all dirt pick 4, but you need to be able to find a good balance between the 2. So looking at race number 3, that's the Dirt Mile. That one's going to start the pick 5. Interestingly, race number 7, the Distaff starts the late pick 5, but there is that overlap because there's only 9 Breeders' Cup races. So one race gets to be in both pick 5s. And for this one, that's that Distaff. And I think of any year that I've watched the Breeders' Cup, this might be the most wide open Distaff that I've ever seen from a pre-analysis standpoint. Obviously, We've had some huge upsets before in the previous couple of years, last year before that. So where the pace is kind of melted down, but just on paper, there doesn't look to be a single standout like we've had in years before. So the Distaff as that make or break leg in between those two pick fives, kind of being between the two, is really going to be important for your handicapping. There's something you can do there. With it being between the two pick fives, you can maybe leverage your situation a little bit better. If you feel confident singling in the dirt mile or singling in the filly and mare sprint, then maybe you go deeper on the Distaff in that first leg to make sure you're covered, and then leverage your opinion to go skinnier on that second pick five. So maybe you go 2 deep or 3 deep in that second pick five. Maybe you go 4 or 5 deep in that first pick five with that same race. So if I was to choose one race to put a lot of time and effort into, I think the Distaff is the one that I would be keying in around, just because it does cross over not only with both those pick fives, it keys into that all dirt pick 4 and that daily double from Friday as well. So a lot of interesting things going on here with the wagering menu. We also do have the Distaff into classic daily double as well. We got rolling pick 3s, rolling daily doubles. For our show next week, we're going to be keying on these pick 5s. So the pick 5 starting in race 7, the pick 5 starting in race 3, and the pick 5 on Friday starting in race 5 there. So now that we've looked into the wagering menu, let's go through each of these races, just kind of give our initial thoughts. Again, haven't dove into the PPs yet. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about here is just my thoughts from throughout the year, to say like, hey, here's some mild opinions I have, how you kind of want to be structuring your ticket, saying like, this is a good leg to go deep in, this is one you might want to go skinny in, this is one where you could take a swing on, just based on the style and structure of the leg. So the first one we're going to talk about is the turf sprint. As I said, like, just this type of race is a little bit of a crapshoot. And you can see here, one of the horses that I like a lot here is Dreamfire, but her first preference is going to be for that Juvenile filly's turf. She was great last race out, won a graded stakes by I think 5 lengths on the turf. First time trying the turf. Her 2 races before that were sprints on the dirt. So she has that sprinting ability, but maybe she wants a little bit longer. But if we get her here, could be worth a shot. One thing I want to mention is these Juvenile fillies Euros coming in have not historically done very well. It's just the way that the firm surface out there at Santa Anita doesn't really correspond with how the turf goes in Europe for these sprints. Could be the turns. A lot of the sprints in Europe are just straight stretch runs, and they're juvenile, so they're 2-year-old. So we haven't seen a lot of 2-year-old Euro success in this turf sprint. So for me, I'm going to look at a horse that has success in America, has success maybe more than one race on the turf. Because a lot of these horses maybe started on the dirt or moving to turf for the first time. So I'm going to try to whittle this one down to say, hey, who's an American turf sprinter that has raced at least twice on the turf, going shorter, and kind of whittle it down from there. I think I'm going to try to fade all the Euros in this race, because I'm going to be leaning so heavily on the Euros in a lot of the other races. Next race, we got the Juvenile fillies. This is one where I have a horse that I really love, and that's Tamara. So I think for Friday, if you're going to single, find one horse that you love. F also very good. VV's Dream's very good. But, you got to fall in love with one horse. And I think Tamara's not going to be that horse for me. So I'm going to be singling Tamara as of right now. Again, I need to dive into the sheets, look at speed figures, look at pedigree analysis, things like that. But I think this is a good spot to leverage an opinion in. I'm not saying that there's a clear favorite here, but I think there's clear enough opinions to where, hey, I've got a 1 in 3 shot. Let's take our opinion and take our swing here. And you can do that for this one. You can do it for any of them, but just as you're structuring your pick 5 ticket, kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Next race up, we've got that Phillies turf. Again, Dreamfire's first preference is here, probably who I'm going to lean on. But this is one where we have seen some more success from the Euros. I'm not sure. I need to look back at the figures specifically, but I think we've seen more success going longer with these JV horses from the European contingent than the sprint. But I need to see exactly what that looks like. But here's one where I would want to lean on those Euros a little bit more. Dreamfire, I think I'm going to put a lot on just from her race last out, which was here in Southern California. But this is one where I'm going to mix in those Euros. I'm just a hard fade against the Euros and the sprints, but I will want them here, and I will want them in the main turf race. Moving into the Juvenile, again, here we've got some Bafferts, and Baffert's been okay in the Breeders' Cup in the past, but you saw last year with Cave Rock had a huge favorite. No one thought that horse could lose. It lost. A horse like Prince of Monaco this year looks to be pretty good. None of these other horses just have that, knockout punch that we've seen before. So, Muth has looked vulnerable. Locked was pretty good. This is one where I'm probably going to go a little bit deep unless I single. I think probably Prince of Monaco is probably the best horse here for Baffert. But again, you're going to get a really short price on that. And so I don't know if I'm willing to eat that. Let's see. Let's take a look at there just really quick. Let's look at this. So, Fierceness 77 last out, 7th place, horrible. General Partner 97 last out, 2nd place behind Timberlake. Locked 95 last out, 105 2 back. So Locked's pretty good. Muth won its last race, lost 2 back to Prince of Monaco. Prince of Monaco's coming off of 3 straight wins, 95, 102, 84. So again, no one's really separating from the field from a speed figures perspective. And I think Prince of Monaco is probably going to be your favorite with probably Flavian Pratt, Bob Baffert in Southern California. So either single Prince Monaco or just completely leave him off your ticket. You're not going to get any value by including him with multiple horses here. So another race where you probably want to take a stand. So moving on to the last one, Juvenile Turf. Again, in these longer races, maybe this is when we include those Euros. We don't have a ton of Euros running here. We've got a couple that have run in America so far. So I'm going to be honest, I don't have a lot of knowledge of the Juvenile Turf races so far in America. So I'm not going to even mention any of these horses. I've heard some good things about a couple of them. This is not one that I feel any level of confidence in so far. So for now, this is going to be my deepest spread, and we'll see. So going skinny in the JB Phillies, maybe going skinny in the turf sprint just based on my kind of like criteria that I have. Deeper in the 2 turf races, and then maybe 2 or 3 in the JV dirt. So then we move on to Saturday. A lot of great races here. Philly Mare Turf. We're seeing something interesting here. We've got In Italian and Gina Romantica, the 2 Chad Brown horses who have faced each other recently. Gina Romantica looks to be going here. In Italian going to, or In Italian staying here most likely. Gina Romantica going to the mile. Maybe In Italian prefers the extra distance. Maybe there's just not as much speed kind of signed up for this race, and so In Italian can get her way. But we do like seeing the Chad Browns kind of spread out a little bit. Didia, I think, is going to be my top choice in this race. I love Didia. Last race out beat a very good horse at Anisette, who I was hoping we'd see here. Not seeing Anisette. So I think with this race, you can lean on the Americans a little bit. I want to look into the Japanese horse, Win Maryland, because we saw the Japanese have been doing much better in the Breeders' Cup recently. We had In Love a few years ago, Marsh Lorraine as well. So they're winning these Breeders' Cup races, and you never want to leave them out, especially in these turf races where they're doing really good. So no one else. In Spiral, I think is one of those great European turf fillies who's coming over. No second choice. Always love to see them when they're like, this is the race that we're targeting, not having a backup plan. So In Spiral, Win Maryland, Moira's okay, Gina Romantica, and Didia, probably where I'm going to be leaning here. I'll look at some of the others as well, ones I don't necessarily know their immediate past performances off the top of my head. All right, next up, what do we got here? Philly Mare Sprint. This is one which would have been everyone's easiest single of the entire day with Echo Zulu, had she not been injured. As of now, wishing her the best. But for now, this goes from an easy single on the card to a wide open race. You got a horse like Goodnight Olive, who's been pretty good all year. Ugiri, who's surging. Desert Dawn, who's doing things that she's probably going to go to the Distaff. Caramel Swirl. So I'm probably going to go against Goodnight Olive, go probably 3 deep here. Not sure who yet, but I don't think Goodnight Olive's going to be a good choice in this race, just the way that her year's been kind of going. So any race where we don't love the favorite, we just want to take them out. And if you love the favorite, you want to single around them. But this is a race where I'm not in love with the favorite, just exiting out. Going to go 2 or 3 deep here beyond that and see if we can get some value here. But anytime in a Breeders' Cup race especially, if you can just say, I don't love this favorite, take them out completely. Here we got the Breeders' Cup Classic. I've got my add-on right here, Go Rocket Ride. Going to be leaning on Go Rocket Ride and probably Arcangelo as my 2 main choices here. I want to fade Arabian Night. He's just going to get so much money. And he's had that one good race. Mage and Go Rocket Ride beat him 2 back off the layoff. So maybe Arabian Night's doing better in Southern California. Maybe it just needed that race off layoff. But he's going to take a lot of money. So I'm going to lean on Arcangelo, and Go Rocket Ride, who I think had the experience moving forward. White Abario is interesting. I had that huge Whitney. And if he ran that Whitney back, I don't think there's anyone who can beat him. But he's just been too inconsistent all year long. And then Saudi Crown, if I can get a good price on Saudi Crown, if he's double-digit odds, which I think he might be, definitely one I want to be including here. There's no other older horses I'm interested in. Not a fan of either of the Japanese horses. I said the Japanese have a shot here in the Breeders' Cup in general. I just don't think this is a race that they'll be able to take. Completely off of Mage for now. King of Steel is a turf horse who just ran. He's probably going to run in the turf if he runs at all. Zandon, I've never been a fan of. Proxy's been inconsistent. Charge It, complete toss for me. So, Classic, Arcangelo, Go Rocket Ride, Saudi Crown. We'll see how the draw comes and what their odds are, what we can get there. Turf Sprint, another one that's kind of a crapshoot here. It isn't as serious as the JV Turf Sprint where you just want to toss the Euros completely, but similar process here where they're running a straight line over in Europe. They're going to be running off of a turn here. You want an American jockey who's used to running those turn styles turf sprints, especially at Santa Anita. So again, Caravel's been really good all year long, kind of struggled last out. So maybe we can try to beat Caravel. So I think you've got 2 options here, either single Caravel, who's going to be a short price, who was 40-1 last year in the Breeders' Cup, or go with someone like Arzak or Tony Ann or Motorius, who I really love. Motorius, I think, is coming off of 3 wins here in South, or had 3 wins at Santa Anita last year, and then this year has been racing at different tracks. Now it's getting back to its best track. I think Motorius is one that we really want to include here. So again, another sprint race where I'm going to be fading the favorite and kind of going a little bit deeper here, trying to gain some value. We already did the Classic, had that one up there twice. Turf Sprint already had that one up there. Here's the regular sprint. And I think this is, we've got Elite Power who's been great all year. Gunite kind of turned the tables on him last time out. But we saw a few years back, a similar thing happened to another horse named Matole, who was great all year long, lost the close race at Saratoga, and then came back, won the Breeders' Cup very impressively. So I think Gunite had its race when it beat Elite Power. I think Elite Power is going to make a comeback here. The only other horse I'd really even want to consider in this race beyond Elite Power, because I'm not going to go Gunite. You either pick Gunite or Elite Power. You don't go both of them. I'm going to go Elite Power, and then maybe the Chosen Run, who's won, I think, 8 straight races in California, mostly against Calabreds, but had a really impressive win last out. But we're racing in California. This isn't in Kentucky. It's a California expert horse racing on this track all the time. If we can get good odds on that, and I don't know if we will, just because the public's going to see those 8 or 9 wins in a row and be like, oh man, this horse is very good. So maybe we'll see. But Elite Power over Gunite for me, and then Chosen Drawn from there. Then the Distaff, kind of a crapshoot. And I said earlier, this is the linchpin between those 2 pick 5s. So if you want to leverage a strong opinion early, say like, hey, I'm skinny on my early pick 5, I'm going to go deep in the Distaff just to make sure it's covered. And then for your late pick 5 to say like, okay, I'm not as sure in some of these later races, so I'm going to go ahead and go deep or go skinny in my distaff in this case. So this is a really good example of having those A, B, C tiers for your horses, where whichever leg you feel more confident on, go skinnier. Pick only your A's for this. Whereas in your other leg, maybe go A, B, C. So just looking at this field, immediately drawn to Clairiere, who I loved earlier in the year. She's just been declining. Her speed figures have been getting lower and lower every single time. The only thing that we have going for her here is that I think this is going to be a hot pace. It was a hot pace last year because you've got a horse like Idiomatic, Randomized, Search Results. All three of those horses are going to want that lead. Adore Manor is going to be close up there. Pretty Mischievous is going to be sitting in third or fourth. Clairiere might get the perfect setup, and if she's going to come from way out of it, like she always does, she's going to make a huge run. So maybe this is her chance to get back. I'm probably going to fade all three of those front runners, Idiomatic, Search Results, and Randomized, and hope that we get a pace meltdown. I love Pretty Mischievous. She's been great all year long, going at the classic distance. She would have lost to Maple Leaf Mill, but that was a sprint, but still a win for her technically. And last out, didn't have a fast track. So if we get a nice fast track for her, I think she'll be doing well. Wet Paint's not one I want any part of. Adore Manor, maybe we'll see how Baffert does on the rest of the card. And I didn't have the mile pulled up here. Let's see if I can find it. The Dirt Mile. There's two horses we want to key in around. One, that's Cody's Wish, obviously. So maybe we can single Cody's Wish. But the other one we want to key in all around is Practical Move, who I've seen a lot of people talk about Practical Move. So I don't think he's going to be as long of a shot as we would like. I think he's probably going to take a lot of money because he's a Southern California horse. Here we go. No, that's the classic. Southern California horse coming off an allowance win with a good speed figure. He was a lot of people's favorite for the Derby. I had future bets on him. I liked him a lot. So Cody's Wish, probably the most likely single between 2 days from just a public betting perspective. I think everyone's going to have Cody's Wish singled. So if you agree, if you think Cody's Wish last race was impressive and is kind of fluky going too long, then single Cody's Wish. I haven't decided if that's where I'm going yet, but I think you're going to get so much value out of your multi. You can Cody's Wish. If you can get a horse like Practical Move or a horse like Zozos, who's coming off of 5 wins out of his last 6 races. He doesn't have the class. He's only raced in 1 graded stakes this year. He won it, or he's raced in 2. He won 1. He lost the other one. So maybe Zozos is surging at the right time. Practical Move, I think, is your likely second choice, which is funny because National Treasure won the Preakness, and no one's really talking about him. I don't think National Treasure is going to get an easy lead. I think Practical Move is probably the best horse in this race going longer. He's just probably the best horse in general, but I do think he prefers 1 turn. So that combination of Cody's Wish, prefers 1 turn, prefers a mile or shorter, maybe the 2 turns is going to get him. Maybe he's kind of done. This is going to be his last race. Maybe you can go with Practical Move. I think you make a choice here to either, single Cody's Wish or single Practical Move. I don't think there's a lot of value anywhere else. Maybe go 2 deep with Practical Move and Zozos. But this is going to be the difference maker on your card. If you can get Cody's Wish home as your easy single, that's going to be great. But if you're able to beat him, you're going to get so much value out of the rest of your ticket that you can go 5 or 6 deep in every other leg and still come away with profit. And that's it. So I want to go ahead and let me close out of this. All right. So as I said, just a brief overview of how we're going to try to structure our tickets and pick 5s for the weekend. We'll be coming out, I believe, Tuesday and Wednesday of next week with our pick 5 shows, for one for Friday, then 2 different shows for Saturday, one for the early ticket, one for the late ticket. We'll talk about our strategy for, structuring how we're going to make those bets, but just want to give a little bit of an instant reaction on the pre-entries. One of the races I guess I didn't cover was the turf. And that's going to be one where I just spread a ton. There's so many good horses in that race. Up to the Mar, Mostadef, Warlike Goddess. Just a great race overall. Really excited to watch it. I don't know about betting it though. So probably 6 deep and just sit back and say, I love it as a fan. So if you can find those races, always great to just be able to sit back, know you're probably covered, and watch it as just a fan of the sport. So we'll talk about that next week when we make our tickets, but appreciate you jumping on, talking about the wagering menu, giving instant reactions. Make sure you like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter @HorseGuyMike, @TrustTheProfits. Take care, and we'll see you all for the Breeders' Cup next week.